I'm Chris Perry, and I teach history. Today, I would like to talk about the Declaration of Independence. Why is July 4th so important? What does the history say? And did you know John Adams actually thought the day would be July the 3rd? He wrote Abigail, his wife, and said, July the 3rd will be the day that Americans will remember. But as it turned out, the Declaration had to be printed, and it was printed on July 4th. So July 4th was just the day it was printed. But that's the day we remember. That's the day you celebrate with barbecue and whatever, right? Also, did you know that Thomas Jefferson may have wanted this to be performed, at least spoken aloud, maybe to music, because of the way it was written. Very interesting. So, what is the history behind this? What are some of the interpretations? What does the Declaration mean today? Right? So, let's just go back to the beginning and look at the beginning of the Declaration, right? So, it takes the colonists quite a while to come to this idea of independence. It's not just right out of the gate, we're declaring independence. They don't do that. They kind of send an olive branch to England. They want to be, I guess you can say, independent, but they don't want to declare it and break off all ties with England because, as you can imagine, you're going against one of the most powerful nations in the world at that time. And you're just this ragtag bunch of colonists. How's that going to work? So they don't. Now, the Revolutionary War itself is going on long before the Declaration is put together. Okay? So the soldiers have already decided. The soldiers have declared independence, so they wouldn't have been fighting in the first place. So it's a political thing. It's between the military and the political. Okay, so eventually what happens, it comes to a point that has to be done. So they put together this committee of 5. You've got John Adams, you've got Thomas Jefferson, you've got Ben Franklin, names we know. Also a few maybe you don't know. Robert Livingston and Roger Sherman. They're there too. Now we kind of forget them, but they were there. So here's the thing, who's going to write it? Now, Adams believes I'm a little bit too radical. People aren't going to listen to me because right now I'm one of the most radical cats in the colonies, right? Which he kind of was. And then you've got Ben Franklin, who does not want to be edited. And he knows this document is really going to be looked at under a microscope and edited. And he doesn't want any part of that. So the task falls to a young Virginian who has made a name for himself as a wonderful writer. And he proves it right here. And the words themselves are amazing, right? If you've ever read this thing, now we all remember, the main things, all men are created equal, endowed by their creator, certain inalienable rights. We know all these things. But this thing actually is an indictment, right? It is an indictment of the English system to break away from the crown and the king. And Jefferson, in his original draft, which he really loved until Franklin got a hold of it, and Jefferson had to be edited, the thing that Franklin didn't want, right? He mentions that he blames the king for slavery. He says it's their fault, right? It's your fault that we have slaves. And it's this really interesting, it lays it out there. So he breaks all bonds. And this is an very important document. Now, this has nothing at all to do with our government today. What comes after this has nothing at all to do with our government today. Because you get the Articles of Confederation. And famously, Alexander Hamilton said this is an excess of democracy. The reason we have the Constitution is because there was too much democracy, they thought. Madison and Hamilton, John Jay, the Federalist Papers, they're saying, whoa, we need to rein this in. Each state can't be independent. We can't have that. So we have to have a strong central government. We must, right? Anyway, that's the Constitution, which some people think that all this just magically happened together, and it didn't. It took a while, because you get the Declaration of Independence, then you have the Articles of Confederation for a while, and you don't get the Constitution until much later. Anyway, so these are the guys, this is what's written, and it's presented, and it's read, and everybody is, So what was the Declaration? What was it? What was the point? Well, it's really kind of a breakup letter, right? This is breaking up with England, saying, I'm sorry, George, we loved you once. We thought the English way of doing things was the greatest thing since sliced bread, but, we kind of want to go our own way now. And we want to do our own thing. We've got this idea of self-government, right? And we think we can handle it over here. Of course, George doesn't like it. And George says, well, I'm going to send some troops over there to show you how much I love you. That's in the Hamilton musical, if you've never seen it. Anyway, so it's the greatest breakup letter ever. Jefferson lays it out there. And he digs. It's great. It's good stuff. It's awesome. All right, so what's the idea? Some of these words that we remember. What did they mean at the time? Maybe what do they mean now? So questions, right? So all men are created equal. What did Jefferson mean, right? Did he really mean all men are created equal? Or just all white property owning men, which is likely who he was referring to? Or did he mean African American men? Probably not, because Jefferson was a slave owner. He also has written some things that would make you believe he's not really down with equality, right? So, what's the point there? All men are created equal. And what about women? Well, they're not even mentioned at all, right? It's not there. And if for the time frame, that's the way it was. But it's a beautiful statement. And if you believe the Declaration is kind of like the Constitution, a living, breathing document, then this thing is going to evolve over time. Right. All right. Now, what is this happiness that Jefferson wants us to pursue? What is he even talking about? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What's even the point of that? I want to pursue some happiness. I try to pursue it every day. But what was Jefferson really getting at? Now, that's an interesting question that I don't know that anyone, obviously, no one's in Jefferson's head, and that would be a crazy place to be anyway. But if you were, what did he mean? Happiness. Just a general feeling of euphoric, happy? I don't know. Now, another thing, did T.J. Thomas Jefferson plagiarize some of this stuff, right? Now, he loved John Locke, as did a lot of people at this time. And John Locke is well known for saying that you have a natural right to life, liberty, and property. Now, Jefferson said life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Maybe owning property was the pursuit of happiness. Jefferson's pursuit of happiness was his books, his wine, and Monticello, and Sally Hemings. Different story. So this is, I don't know. I mean, he took some of John Locke's ideas. I wouldn't necessarily say that he plagiarized them, because at this time you have to remember there's not like footnotes floating around. You're not like having a bibliography. People just write. So there's not anything to say, well, I'm giving credit to whoever. I mean, there's kind of idea stealing everywhere. I mean, people are just putting stuff out there. And you can tell sometimes. I mean, you can read something and you can see that clearly they took this from somewhere else. In this case, I don't think that Jefferson's plagiarizing, but he was definitely inspired by Locke. There's no doubt about that. So, how do people look at it later? This is where it really gets interesting, because Abraham Lincoln has a very interesting take on it later. He brings it back up. He is one of these guys that takes the ideas of the founders and he brings them back, like at the perfect time, right before the Civil War. Now, Lincoln, during debates, he's running for Senate in Illinois against Stephen Douglas, and they have these debates, which are really famous because they talk about some really important topics. And one of the things that come up is the Declaration. Lincoln's contention is that Jefferson did mean slaves. He did mean African Americans. He did. That's why he said it the way that he did. And he makes the case, this is exactly the living, breathing document. This is what Jefferson meant. And he kind of is speaking for Jefferson here. Now, whether you believe that or not, it's up to you, but this is what Lincoln was saying. And Lincoln would take a lot of these ideas and really do some wonderful things with them. These early documents and early ideas, and Lincoln was great at that. Now, some people believe that he adopted the founders as his own family, right? There's a great book out there called Founder's Son by Richard Brookhiser that's really good. It's about Lincoln, if you're interested in that. Now, so this is what he said, okay? So that's Lincoln's idea. Well, there's other ones too. In fact, one of the most provocative ideas is Frederick Douglass. You're talking about a smart guy. Frederick Douglass was brilliant, self-taught. He was a former slave that escaped slavery. And then he asked the question, and this is really profound. He asked the question, what to the slave is the 4th of July? So in other words, what does the Declaration of Independence, the 4th of July, mean to the American slave? Absolutely nothing. Why should it? It's just another day. You're celebrating escaping slavery from England, and you're holding us as slaves. So why should a slave care anything about the Declaration of Independence? Now, this has long been one of those things that is really, when you dig down to it, when you look at American history and you go through the different phases of how this has happened, this is one of those things that really, honestly, the founding document of this nation, it's an interesting way to look at it because it did not. I mean, clearly it couldn't have. Slavery was, this unbelievable stain on, even Jefferson said it later. He said it was a stain. He actually used those words. And it was. And this is, if you read the whole speech, it's just brilliant the way that Douglass puts that together. And I would recommend it. I mean, because it's powerful. It really makes you think, right? Now, so if you fast forward a little bit to today, you get to Martin Luther King Jr., which in his mountaintop speech, he has a line that I'm taking here. Now, he's referring to the Constitution when he says this, but I think you can apply it to the Declaration too. Be true to what you said on paper, right? Now, when he says that, he's talking about the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, things like that. But I think when you get down to all men are created equal and they're endowed by their Creator certain unalienable rights, or inalienable rights, this is it, right? Be true to what you said on paper. Everybody. And later, when you get to the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, right? When you get through the Civil War and you have, the slavery is abolished, you have citizenship rights, then you have the right to vote, all these things that are immediately tried to be taken away, especially in the Jim Crow South. You have to be true to what you said on paper, right? Anyway, so I think that's it. That's the key to the whole thing. I mean, the Declaration is an American creed. It's something that we should live up to. It's something that we should strive to achieve because, if you look at when it was written and the context of that and what comes after, it's hard to say that it was all inclusive because it probably wasn't. But maybe it is now. Maybe we're getting there to where it can be, right? Anyway, so these words, and this is what makes the Declaration of Independence such an important document. And really, when the 4th of July comes along, just when you're celebrating with, barbecue, cookouts, libations, however you celebrate, think about it, right? Because the words are just beautiful, amazing. Jefferson's a lot of things, but boy, could he write. It was really good. These are amazing words. So the words are still inspiring and provocative to this day. And I love to talk about it when I'm in class, and I do, and even we'll dress up like that. So, and it's always a fun way to look at July 4th, which we take for granted today as just being, happy summer July. But there's a lot to it, and it's a really important moment. So I hope that at least some of this has made you think about it. Maybe you enjoyed it, and I hope you have a wonderful 4th of July.